Joining us now, a very special guest, Anna Khachiyan of the Red Scare podcast. Anna, thank you so much for joining the show. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for pronouncing my last name correctly.
Well, I interviewed you previously, so I remember how to say it. So that's why it works out. I've had a little bit of experience. Anna, we were trying to brainstorm. We're like, who do we talk to about all of this Russian cancellation, the backlash? We've got the Guggenheim is throwing planes into the center, calling for a new no-fly zone.
Don't get me started.
You as an art person, I know in particular, we're going to be pissed off about that one. Let's put this on the screen. We've got the Russian backlash against these Russian restaurants and tea houses, and all of this Yelp bombs are happening. Just give us a way to think about this. You're a Russian American, a cultural critic yourself. What do you think this tells us about America?
Well, the first thing that you can always count on is that the most pathetic and depraved examples of activism across the board will always come from the art world. I saw the Guggenheim thing. I saw the Russian restaurants that they reported on this woman who is actually Ukrainian, and she called her restaurant Russian from the get-go because she thought it would have more name recognition, and that's really come to backfire. You see a lot, I live in New York, and You see a lot of yellow and blue flags, people taking a stand. I'm really kind of personally less interested in the specific examples of various corporate entities and activists getting in line with whatever the Western governments are already doing. We've spent the last 5 or 6 years owning the libs. We saw kind of slacktivism at its best with BLM and then with COVID. I'm sure that as we speak, there is some woman-owned athleisure brand that is coming out with a blue and yellow pair of yoga pants named after Zelensky. But I feel like the joke is not funny anymore. It's less satisfying now to own the libs.
Anna, can you just tell people, you were born in Russia, correct? Can you give people a little bit of your backstory? And then do you have family, friends that you're talking to in Russia right now?
So I was born in Moscow back when Russia was the Soviet Union. And actually, when we moved here as a family, we were sort of in limbo because we didn't have any kind of citizen status in anywhere. And my dad's entire family is in Moscow, and I have been corresponding with my cousins. I think that among liberal, Western educated Russians, the attitude is almost unanimously anti-war and anti-Putin. I have no sense really what it is for the rest of the country. I'm assuming they're much more supportive. Putin has something like a 70% approval rating, which again, I would take with a grain of salt. But I think overall, I'm sure the vibe is mixed.
Yeah.
And I think, as I would just quote the Russians with Attitude podcast, I think they said it best, that attitude, the kind of staunchly anti-Putin attitude, which I think in the West most people agree with, is the people that are mostly advocating for it are, it's a tautology. They're the most Western-leaning people in Russia are the most Western-leaning people in Russia.
Yeah.
That makes
and what
sense.
do you have any sense of what is the rough percentage that would fall into that sort of Western-oriented, educated, more elite group in Russia that tends to be, that's anti-Putin and is now anti-war?
Please don't ask me to talk percentages. I have no clue. I'm sure that it's the minority, which is not to say that most Russians are pro-Putin or pro-war necessarily, but I think that as we've seen in the West, these type of events have a unifying factor. I saw a lot of commentators on Twitter complaining about how everybody from political actors to corporations to kind of individuals of the activist ilk who are falling for the most kind of blatant psyops and propaganda are very heavily kind of shilling for the war. And to me, that was almost like a beautiful moment of national solidarity. For once, this torn and divided country is finally united. And I'm assuming the situation would be similar in Russia. And, on the question of sanctions, for example, there's this idea, right, that sanctions are imposed to pressure kind of the oligarchs and the people to turn against Putin, but it's unclear whether that's going to have its intended effect.
Yeah, that's actually what I wanted to get from you. In terms of your understanding, now we see McDonald's is out, Coca-Cola, et cetera. And as we've kept saying here, that's not because of the goodness of their heart. It's because they're required to by Western sanctions. They literally can't wire money out of this. But what's your sense, Anna, of how is this going to impact life in Russia? It's easy for me to say, like, oh, they're not going to have an iPhone, McDonald's, but I don't know what that means in the context of actual contemporary Russian life. Like, how much of this is going to change their day-to-day, not just in Moscow, but in the, out in the rural areas?
Well, I mean, I think, like I said, again, I'm less interested in the specific examples of sanctions and more in this kind of unprecedented reconfiguration of the global economic order, the global financial order. I think in the short run, it's going to be a very painful and arduous process. Yeah. And it's unclear whether it'll be successful. I mean, Putin certainly pulled the plug on Western consensus, but it's really an open question as to whether he'll be able to pull off the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Anna, what do you think over the long term? I mean, one of the things that we've seen in other countries is that these kind of indiscriminate sanctions can help to bolster a national movement, like rally people around a cause. Do you see any signs of that or think that that's a possibility here as well?
Certainly. Again, I don't have a great kind of intuitive sense of what's going on in Russia outside of what the people I speak to tell me. And again, they're mostly like liberal and Western leaning. And, I can't do anything but be kind of like supportive and respect their opinion. But I can see a situation where the sanctions do kind of unite and galvanize Russians against the West even more. Because, I forgot who said this, but nobody likes to be hated or targeted. Yep. And, in the Western establishment, among the kind of elite and media and political class, Putin's invasion is seen overwhelmingly as like an unprecedented act of unprovoked aggression. I don't think that Russians see it that way. I don't think even resistance figures, opposition figures in Russia see it that way. For example, Navalny was open about the fact that NATO was a non-starter, NATO at the doorstep of Russia.
Yeah, I mean, even I think Gorbachev has said I was outraged by it. I mean, there's always been a lot of cope here in terms of which Russians we listen to and what they say, the opposition figures, and then the rest of the part that they don't say that people here don't want to agree with. I think one of the points that you're making around the Russian-American backlash, nobody wants to be hated. I feel like these examples of the Guggenheim or of these conductors getting fired or some of these poor business owners here in D.C., one of my favorite bars, Russia House, has been vandalized. I had to take down its Russian flag. I just think that, and I mean, I appreciate your perspective on this, that it's going to have a tremendous backlash, both inside of Russia, but also how do Russian Americans supposed to deal with this? In New York City, when I was there are a lot of Russian Americans that were very proud of being Russian, even though they've probably lived there 3-4 generations.
Right, and I think what's interesting is that, after BLM and Stop Asian Hate, we have these kind of like hashtag movements. There's a precedent. People really like to kind of glom onto these movements, and it's very clear that there's going to be a rise in Russophobia. The thing with Russians is that you can't identify them as easily on the street, right? They can pass. So, I mean, I think that whatever is going on with Russophobia in kind of the United States pales in comparison to what's going on in the Ukraine. I'm sure it's probably a fairly painful and demoralizing experience for expatriate Russians in the States, because most of them, again, I would gather, are probably, again, staunchly anti-Putin and anti-war.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all well said. Anna, thank you so much for taking some time out to share your perspective with us. It's great to have you. It's great to meet you.
Thanks, Anna. We'll have a link to Red Scare in the description.
Guys, go subscribe to Red Scare if you're not already.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, Anna.
Take
Appreciate
care.
it very much. Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. I mean, it's been such a crazy couple of weeks here. Our premieres of Kyle and Marshall did quite well on the channel yesterday,
People
Krystal.
seem to be
So
liking all
we're
the new
very happy
content,
with them.
so
We've
thanks,
got
guys.
great content, great partnerships that you guys enable in order to pay for extra staff or the infrastructure in order to support that. We're creating an ecosystem here where we can support independent channels without all of the headaches of the traditional model. I really think we are pioneering something new in terms of our partnerships with Daily Poster and Matt Stoller and now Marshall and Kyle. And we've got big stuff in mind for the midterm elections, how exactly we can cover it exactly in the proper way, hiring and partnering with the right people in the right districts to bring you holistic coverage, and also just give us something very different from what I think you're going to hear on the mainstream media.
Yeah,
you guys are the ones who support that with our premium members. So thank you all so much, helping us keep the lights on, helping us keep expanding. The more you show up for us, the more we'll continue to use your trust and your hard-earned money in a way to grow out the brand and give you guys the best product as possible. You're always our number one concern. So
Indeed. I also just want to throw out there, and Saagar can back me up
Yes.
on this, that it was not actually my idea to bring Kyle onto the channel.
That's true. Oh,
it was Saagar's.
Is that a conspiracy theory? Yeah,
No, of course.
I floated it. Oh.
Of course, everyone's like,
I
oh,
asked-
Crystal's bringing her boyfriend onto the channel.
I asked Krystal to ask Kyle if he would do so. So that's at 100% true. I didn't even know you were going to bring that up, but it is true. I can vouch for that, confirm
Yeah,
that.
but people seem to respond well to it. So
but
it's
hey,
a very good
it did
idea.
well. So guess
and-
what?
Yeah,
It was a good idea.
And here's the other thing that's very intentional about the model of partnerships
Mm-hmm.
that we're pursuing is that we really believe in a vibrant, independent media ecosystem. And so that means like we're one little hub, and then if we can support, Stoller and what he's doing,
James Lee.
and
He's got a new
Marshall
video
and
coming.
Jason
Yeah.
Lee and Kyle, and and help to bolster this entire media ecosystem. That's something we really, really believe in because there's no saving cable news, okay? They're not gonna change. That model is what it is. And we have to have an alternative that lands for a wide variety of people, that has traction, that has scale. And I think that, that this is our effort, our little contribution to trying to do that. And it looks it's great for us too, because their content is fantastic, and I know you guys are
Exactly.
enjoying it.
And this gets to the traditional models. In mainstream media, they own your stuff. They have copyright, all of that. We don't do any of that. We don't demand any ownership stake, nothing. We're like, hey, we put it on here, we promote you. We give you as much of a exposure to the audience as possible. This is how it's gonna work in a decentralized media environment. And it is much better for everybody involved when we do so. So once again, you guys are the ones who are empowering that. It wouldn't exist without any of you. So thank you all very much.
Yeah.
And if you're able to support us, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, we always really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Hope you had a great week. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. We've got some great content for posting for you over the weekend, and we will see you back here on Monday.
See you Monday.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.